Quick question. Do your end users always, and I mean always, without exception, work on company owned devices and IT approved apps? I didn't think so. So, how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has an answer to this question: Extended Access Management. 1Password Extended Access Management helps you secure every sign in for every app on every device because it solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. Check it out at onepassword.com/XAM. That's onepassword.com/XAM.
Hi, I'm Jonna Till Johnson, CEO of Nemertes, here with my co-host,
John Burke, CTO of Nemertes.
and you're listening to Heavy Strategy, the show that tries to ask the right questions and not give the right answers. So today we're going to talk about something that is top of mind for a lot of the tech folks we've been talking to, which is namely return to the office. I have to admit, I thought this particular ghoul had been beaten to the ground because the productivity data shows absolutely conclusively that hybrid work and work from home can be highly productive in the sense that companies' profits went up during COVID due to the productivity increase. And we've looked at the 6 ways from Sunday. Pretty much every company, the data comes in and says, yes, work from home, hybrid work has been productive. So the productivity argument that people need to return to the office would seem to have been appropriately countered, but it seems not, because we've heard many high-profile companies like AT&T and Amazon and Ericsson have all, and many others have all required that their employees return to the office. Some say you have to return to the office 5 days a week at a specific location. Some say it's on average 60% of the time. Some say it's 3 days a week. But in general, January is pretty much when, if you haven't already gotten hit with a return to the office mandate, that will be when it comes in. And John, I know you and I talked about this a little bit before the episode. And this is one where we can't legitimately disagree,
Yeah, no, I think you and I have been in pretty violent agreement on this since the pandemic, and making the argument that it was going to be a one-way transition because there were just too many practical considerations on the side of being extremely flexible in supporting work from home, and indeed going so far as to making the shift to mainly work from home permanent rather than optional, even after the health crisis had faded. So yeah, I think overall it's going to be more of what should people do kind of a discussion when we get into this further. So you haven't yet been hit by a return to the office mandate, but say you come in Monday morning to your office at home and there's the email waiting for you. Time to return to the office, January 2nd. You'd better be there, every day,
what do you do?
All day. What should you do?
Yeah, and I will honestly admit that this particular topic was actually raised to me by a friend of mine who works for a large company that literally said, it's great that you've been working from home all this time, but now you have to return to the office. He is a star worker, star engineer, star researcher who has won great accolades and covered the company with glory. And they're telling him he has to commute 90 minutes to a neighboring state to go into an office where there is absolutely nobody for him to collaborate with. That's the state that he's got. So my response to him was, that's cool. It's November. They want you in the office in January. That gives you plenty of time to interview headhunters, explain to them the kind of job you want, what your requirements are above and beyond that you need to be able to work from home or have a very short commute in the city that you live in. Tell them the ideal job and get them out there working for you. And then wait to see what happens. When January comes, there's a couple of different ways you can game this out. The first thing is you refuse to go into the office, your boss turns a blind eye, and that's the end of it. That would be the happy solution, although it's not perfect, but it's probably not going to happen for most folks. What we've also heard is with our clients, we've heard horror stories where the managers have gotten penalized and lost bonuses and things like that because they allowed their employees who were star workers to work from home and disregard the company rules. So more likely your manager is going to say, nah, you got to come in. I mean, you really have to come in. And if you don't, we're going to have to start the process of disciplining you and building out your HR file.
I think you and I differ a little bit on this. I think we may see some of that up front, but when people start to see their star talent just taking jobs somewhere else because they get to keep working from home, they'll have to soften their approach or deal with a brain drain. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see how flexible companies can be. If their middle managers come to them and say, look, I'm losing all the people who actually get the work done here just in favor of having the folks who are willing to come in, and I'm not going to meet my numbers. As soon as they don't start meeting their numbers or the better numbers that they were projecting being able to meet because they had all the star talent, I think the policies will get softer.
Maybe not. I mean,
Yeah.
my problem is there hasn't been any rationality in this from the get-go, and what you're
Good
suggesting
point.
would imply rationality. Just to be clear, folks, if you're listening to this and you haven't yet figured out why CEOs are asking for return to the office, there is one simple response, which is the value of commercial real estate. Basically, all of these big companies have spent a ton of money to have big fancy buildings, and the value of those buildings depends on their occupancy rates. So if the occupancy rates stay low, the value of the buildings will plummet and the value of the holdings will plummet. So the company's value plummets. And now you've got basically your stock, your stock options or your stock is worth less.
Ooh, don't forget the special tax breaks.
Well, yes, I was about to get to the special tax breaks, which is the other issue is that in a lot of cases, a lot of these buildings were constructed with tax breaks from states or municipalities that are dependent on the company bringing people into a downtown area. And if those people don't show up, the tax breaks get rescinded. So here's the deal. If that's the case, why are the CEOs not standing up and saying, hey, folks, it's all about the value of commercial real estate and our tax breaks. And by the way, if you own stock in our company, which you should, right, as a good employee, the value of your stock is going to go down if you don't come into the office. You may disagree with it. You may decide not to go into the office, but at least they're being honest with you. But instead, they're lying. And when I say they're lying, I really mean literally lying. The data shows that people are more productive when they are allowed to combine work and home life seamlessly. Profits have risen, productivity has risen, everything is up when you allow this kind of flexibility. And yet CEOs say, oh, well, we need people in the office because it's more productive. It's not, so they're lying. So I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's really important to understand this as you're making your plans for what to do. And when it comes to the brain drain, John, this is where I think you and I may disagree a little bit, because companies are saying that sort of the behind the scenes is, oh, well, we can avoid having layoffs if we just chase off those malcontents who want to work from home. But typically those are the best and brightest.
Well, yeah, when you're doing a round of layoffs in a company, you typically try and avoid cutting away the useful muscle and instead trim the fat. That was standard practice at some of the big employers in the industry, like Cisco and stuff. They would trim 10% of underperforming employees in their perspective on what constituted underperforming regularly. Every few years they'd trim it. So they had all that staff money to spend on hiring people who would take them, down the next technological road they wanted to go down. If you're filtering on something that's not related to performance, if you're filtering on willingness to show up in a particular building, that's not conducive to the bottom line or the top line numbers going up.
Yep. And so I think in order to really predict what's going to happen next with return to the office, the first thing you need to understand is whether you're a manager, a star employee, a rank and file employee, or anything else, you have to recognize that senior management is lying to you. So big whoop, they do it all the time. But in this particular case, they are not your friends and they are lying to you. So thing number one is to protect yourself. And that's why I recommended to my friend to go out and talk to headhunters and to audition headhunters so that he can have the perfect person to work with, so he can find the perfect job, because he is a star. He's literally a rock star at what he does, and he can go anywhere. And if there's anyone for whom this is resonating, please do that. That said, you may not think of yourself as a star. Maybe you're just a rank and filer and you kind of really like your job and prefer to be able to pay the mortgage. What do you do, John?
In that case, don't panic and consider your options, because if you're good at what you do, even if you're not a rock star, if you're good at what you do, you probably have options, and you should be looking for work in other places where the policy is still flexible. If that isn't possible for you for whatever reason, then you need to take a proactive approach in managing your manager. Manage up in this case. Talk to them. Understand the kind of pressures that they are under that limit or don't how much flexibility they have in enforcing the policy. Because what the CEO says to everybody in that big email announcement may not be what's been communicated by HR to the middle management about the limits of their power, their flexibility, and therefore your options. We have read in the media and know from personal experience that sometimes these things are enforced very selectively based on, that great biblical precedent of not binding the mouths of the kine that tread the grain. Look it up. It's a good one. But basically, if you're one of the people who really gets the work done, they don't want to, the middle management don't want to lose you because you get the work done. So they will use what flexibility they have to make your life work in a way that gets the work done.
So basically, go ahead, John.
I'm going to say, and if they don't have that level of flexibility, then maybe you're back to looking for other work. And it may take longer than you want, but keep going.
Stop. I will say, no matter what, I think step one is to start looking for other work, because there's always, as you game, regardless of who you are, as you game this out, there's a huge difference between hypothetically being able to get another job and having a freaking offer in your hot little hand.
Makes a huge difference.
And it makes a huge difference to you, to your confidence level, and to your, to your financial stability. So no matter how much you think you can negotiate, you should still backstop the entire exercise by making sure you're job hunting on your own or getting a good headhunter. And by the way, you don't have to be a rock star. You just have to have decent skills that people are looking for. Things like cloud security, right? If you know what you're doing with cloud security, if you know what you're doing with a handful of other top technology areas, you can pretty much write your own ticket. And then do that first, protect yourself first, then get that process in motion, start working on it, then go talk to your manager. And John, as you said, see how much flexibility there is. Interestingly, there's a Computer World article about Ericsson. It's by Karen Lindstrom. It came out about 2 weeks ago in October. Well, actually, it came out in October 23rd. And what's interesting is Ericsson recently tightened its policy for office attendance, but they actually asked for a 60% attendance over the course of a year. So that doesn't mean that you have to be in every 3 days out of every 5. And what's interesting is there was a lot of confusion that managers didn't understand that. And so they had scenarios where people suddenly came in, and my favorite one was they were talking about people having to take calls from the toilet because there wasn't room for them. So it would have been helpful to know, hey, it's actually 60% over the course of the year. So maybe we come in person and do workshops for 2 weeks, and that covers us for the next 2 months, or however the math works out. Right.
Or we come in when the office air conditioning is better than the air conditioning at home.
Right. But one of the big fears that I think a lot of people would have, and if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, well, that's great, John and Jonna, but what if there aren't any other jobs? If everybody's requiring return to the office, then I've got to go too, right? I'm stuck. Well, there's an absolutely fantastic article from Smart Brief, which highlights the fact that here in the US, at least, everybody believes that return to the office is happening and the number of remote workers peaked. Actually, it's been monotonically increasing since the start of COVID. And now we're up at 23% of workers at the end of 2024, at the end of the summer of 2024, were teleworking. And that has gone up from 2023, and that has gone up again from 2022. So, in other words, workers are increasingly teleworking. Therefore, there will be a job for you. You just have to go out and find it. And that's the other thing. You're probably going to be finding it as a smaller company because smaller companies can't offer, the big company benefits, but they can certainly say, hey, we'll let you work from home if that's what you want to do. Frankly, we've done that at Nemertes for the past 20 years. We've been work from home and it's worked out great for us. We understood that treating people like adults and allowing them to work from home, benefiting from their willingness to work at all hours of the day and night has benefited us. So kind of thing number one, try to backstop no matter what you do to try to find another job and be confident that there are jobs out there. It may take a little while, but they're there. Thing number two, talk to your managers and see how much flexibility there is. Is there a thing number three, John?
Let's pause for a message from today's sponsor, 1Password. Imagine your company's security is like the quad of a college campus. There are nice brick paths between the buildings. Those are the company-owned devices, IT-approved apps, and managed employee identities. And then there are the paths people actually use, the shortcuts worn through the grass or the actual straightest line from point A to B. Those are the unmanaged devices, shadow IT apps, and non-employee identities like contractors. And most security tools only work on those happy brick paths, but lots of security problems take place on the shortcuts. 1Password Extended Access Management is the first security solution that brings all these unmanaged devices, apps, and identities under your control. It ensures that every user credential is strong and protected, every device is known and healthy, and every app is visible. 1Password Extended Access Management solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM can't. It's security for the way we work today, and it's now generally available to companies with Okta and Microsoft Entra, and in beta for Google Workspace customers. Check it out at onepassword.com/XAM. That's onepassword.com/XAM. And now back to the podcast.
Well, consider buffing up some specialized skills. Maybe you're jack of all trades at your office, and if you polish up your skills in a couple of specific areas, you'll become much more marketable to a potential future employer who probably should also be hiring a jack of all trades. But in point of fact, whenever people post for jobs, they post for specialization in specific areas. Buff up on some of those. A hugely useful thing. I think it's probably also good to reevaluate your own willingness and ability to go in to an office regularly, because reflexively, I don't want the option taken away, obviously. Jonna, I don't want to commute to Maryland to work every day.
It'd be expensive.
It would be. Fire up the Learjet. But in point of fact, a lot of folks who would prefer to work at home may not have a severe impact on their quality of life by going back to work. They may have a 10-minute commute, not a 90-minute commute. And so, be pretty clear-eyed about your reasons for not wanting to go back to the office, and yourself. Be flexible if you have that option. There are people who don't.
And John, you raised an interesting point, because one of our clients has the oddest work day, but it works for him. He has to commute into the nearby city from the suburbs. So he goes in at 3 a.m. and leaves at noon. And yes, that means he's going to bed when there's, the sun's still up and he's not crazy about it. But it also means that he has available afternoon time if he wants to cut into his sleep or on a Friday to do stuff that he wants to do from home. And that may be something you can talk to your management about. Is it possible to set up unusual work hours so that you're in the office, you legitimately get your in the office ticks, box ticks, but you're maybe doing it on a time frame that works better for you in your personal situation.
Yep. And I think one of the other arguments that we see put forward for requiring everybody to return to the office is that it's a matter of equity, because there are positions in the company that are not allowed to work remotely, and there are people out there who don't have a place at home to work remotely from. They had to do it during COVID, but the lack of a separate room with a door that closes makes a big difference for your being able to telecommute productively. And so those are folks who returned to the office as soon as they could because it just worked better for them. But between that and all the folks whose jobs don't allow them to telecommute, the argument can be made that it is inequitable to allow folks to work remotely just because they can. And
well, I would pivot that a little bit and say there are people that prefer to work in the office for whatever reason. A lot of the folks that have small apartments or noisy roommates or whatever also tend to be younger, and they tend to need more mentoring, need more collaboration, need more ability to interact with other people, and in
need
fact,
to build a community. Yeah.
yeah. And one of my good friends who manages clinical trials at her hospital said she was delighted to come back to the office because her job requires supporting a lot of very young researchers and scientists who don't know how to do things. And it's much faster and more effective for her to just show them when she's right there and sort of talk them off the ledge when they get wrapped up in things that, maybe older and more seasoned workers might not worry about. So there's the fact that younger people may want to work in the office. People whose job it is to support directly may want to work in the office. And that's cool. The whole point here is flexibility. I don't think you're hearing us argue that everyone should work from home all the time. First of all, as John pointed out, it's not always possible. Second of all, people may not want to. There are benefits to working in the office. But I think the bigger challenge is recognizing that a ham-handed return to the office mandate is not in your best interests. It's not in the company's best interests. It's not in your team's best interests. So you probably want to recognize that and realize even if you're one of those people that prefers to be working in the office, your team and your direct reports may be quietly polishing their resumes to go to more flexible companies.
And we should probably put in a word for the middle managers who are going to be
Right.
in the vice grips in this one.
Yes.
Between the needs of their workers and the needs or demands of upper management. Our hearts and minds are with you.
Yeah. And I would say
prayers and thoughts. That's it.
yeah, thoughts and prayers are with you. I would also say kind of at a bigger picture, I'm not opposed to people being in the office. People sometimes say, Jonna, you're nuts. People have to be in the office in order to collaborate. And there's a degree of truth in that. But when you have people in the office, what you actually if you want them to be collaborating, interacting, brainstorming, and all that fun stuff, what you need to be doing is have a focus specifically on that so that you can give them a room where they're brainstorming amongst each other and have a period of time when they're devoted to that brainstorming, devoted to that, and not staring at their screens or taking calls from the toilet. And one of the conversations you might want to have with your manager, if you've got one of these draconian rules, is to say, look, can we do something where working in the office, we're using that time to collaborate, to strategize, to work on our architecture, do something that really requires interactivity, so that then we can do our quiet siloed work from home. And that's a good conversation to have, because once you start talking about the nature of the work that you're doing, then you're actually addressing the real issues. Do you need to be around other people to do this thing? Then make it so, right?
Absolutely. And consider sort of the inverse of that, which is what parts of being in the office made people less productive? And can you get those fixed as a part of this return to work movement? And I'm thinking here specifically of open plan offices, where of course people got more productive when they got sent home. They weren't sitting in a room with 15 other people all talking into their telephones at the same time, A, distracting them, and B, making it harder for them to have the conversation they were trying to have, whatever that was, customer service, sales, you name it. Open plan offices were just an energy suck, a time suck, an attention suck. They just sucked. And I know they didn't die when everybody went home to work at home during COVID, but the fact that people didn't flock back to them was a good indication of how work hostile they were as environments. So part of getting folks to come back and work at work should be making the work environment work better for getting work done.
Yeah. And so if you're lucky enough to be asked your advice about how the office space should be designed and all those other things, think about this. John, when you were talking about that, I immediately flashed to something. I read a Substack called Work Futures by a guy named Stowe Boyd, who's
Very cool.
fantastic. I
Yeah.
love the guy. And the most recent article that came out is fundamentally annoying. And he's got this quote that says, I have a quote from a guy named Bud Cadell, who said, I have a brewing belief that working together with other people is fundamentally annoying, frictionful, and messy inherently. And it's better to surrender that to that reality than invent all manner of games to try to obfuscate that reality. So at some point, whether you're in the office with them or you're working from home and having to deal with them on Teams, it's still annoying, fundamentally annoying.
Yep. Hell is other people, as Sartre said.
Yes. So I don't know that we've gotten the right answers here, John. But I think, some of the questions you ought to be asking are, hey, what are the job opportunities for me? Hey, what skills do I need for the job opportunities to be what I want them to be? And I would say, hey, what else is out there while I go in to negotiate and have all these conversations with management and my teams? And again, if you're one of the people that's stuck in between this and you're having to tell your teams what to do to conform with this mandate, a big question to ask is there a flexible way I can do this so that they don't suffer so much? Whether it's flexible hours or using the in-office time for real collaboration. If somebody's coming at you with this mandate and you've got to work with it, maybe there's ways to soften the blow, and it's worth asking about them.
It's good to know in advance, definitely. And for those of you who are facing it, think carefully about how much you really don't want to go back to the office. Think it through.
Right.
Don't just work on reflex on that one.
Yep. Well, and so that's it for today. Thank you for joining us. Please, if you got feedback or a follow-up or a horror story or the opposite of a horror story, please send us a message at packetpushers.net/FU, which stands for follow-up. We love to hear from you, and we read all the follow-ups and respond to them as warranted. You do not have to leave your name. You don't have to identify your organization or yourself or anything else. Just reach out to us. And as always, if you want to talk to John or myself, you can reach us at nemertes.com. That's N like Nancy, E-M like Mary, E-R-T-E-S like Sam.com, nemertes.com. We look forward to hearing from you.